Hartmann here on the best of the rest of science and green news. You need to know this. Beans may help to curb the harms of climate change in some of the world's most vulnerable regions. Last Wednesday, the Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research reported that 30 new lines of heat beater beans have been discovered. The report states that beans are currently vital for the food security of more than 400 million people. But the amount of productive land for growing traditional lines of beans may be cut in half globally as a result of a warming planet. Tests demonstrated that the new beans could potentially grow in even the most dire warming scenario, such as a 4 degrees Celsius increase of global temperatures. This means that under current projections of a global temperature increase of 2 degrees C by the end of the century, the heat beater beans should be able to avoid a productivity crash. Remarkably, these strains of beans have been bred without using genetic modification. Rather, researchers used good old-fashioned conventional methods to cross variations of the common bean, such as pinto, white, black, and kidney beans, with the tepary bean, which has been cultivated in North America since pre-Columbian times. The resulting crosses are heat and drought resistant and also have a higher iron content, which researchers hope will additionally curb the prevalence of malnutrition in developing countries. We still need to find ways to drastically decrease our dependence on carbon to avoid the worst-case climate scenarios. This is a very good indicator that some of the world's most vulnerable regions can still look forward to a food-secure future. The Earth and its oceans are warming, but one area in the North Atlantic appears to be defying this trend. Stefan Ramsdorf of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research led research that examined sea surface and atmospheric temperature data along with proxy data from ice cores, tree rings, coral, and sedimentary samples. The goal of that research was to examine whether the area of cooling in the North Atlantic is correlated to a slowdown of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the AMOC. This circulation is essential to maintaining the Atlantic's plant and animal life. We typically refer to it as the Gulf Stream, and it is responsible for bringing warm waters and air from the equator to North Europe, which helps to keep winters mild in Europe. Since the Industrial Revolution, increased warming on Earth has resulted in an increase in ice melt from the Greenland ice sheet. Ramsdorf and his team believe that the resulting flow of fresh water onto the surface of the Atlantic is causing the Gulf Stream's circulation to fail. While scientists have been aware of this phenomenon for decades, most studies estimated that we would not start seeing the circulation slow down to this extent until after 2100. Ramsdorf and his team's research make it clear that climate change is already disrupting our planet's oceans and that effects of global warming are happening much quicker than previously suspected. 2 weeks ago, France passed a new law mandating rooftops on new buildings in commercial zones must be partially covered in either plants or solar panels. That legislation aims to promote energy efficiency in cities while providing a host of other benefits, such as decreasing rainwater runoff and reducing the impact of urbanization on biodiversity. Environmental activists originally pushed for the legislation to apply to all rooftops and wanted every rooftop to be entirely covered with either plants and soil or solar panels, but the legislation that finally passed gives businesses the option to install the solar panels instead. Green roofs weigh much more than conventional roofs and cost much more up front, but provide excellent insulation and last longer than conventional roofs, resulting in significant long-term savings for businesses and for cities as a whole. While it may be years before those savings translate to the country's scale, and France sees substantial cost benefits, it is a clear acknowledgement that France is serious about fighting climate change and adapting to a post-carbon economy. And finally, over a third of the United States has passed legislation to allow marijuana to be consumed for medical or recreational purposes. And advocates of marijuana law reform are looking forward to more legislation passing in more states in coming years. But as marijuana becomes more available, researchers are beginning to question the purity of what's hitting the market across the U.S. Even states that have completely legalized use, like Colorado, are finding that cannabis oil products are not required to be tested for cannabinoid potency or for contaminants such as pesticides or fungal growth. In Washington state, where testing for contaminants is required, about 13% of marijuana products never made it to the market in 2014, as state inspectors rejected samples for being contaminated with E. coli, salmonella, and yeast mold. Shouldn't come as much of a surprise, as these contaminants are common in all agriculture, But as more states legalize medical and recreational marijuana, it's important that we're ensuring the safety of patients and consumers rather than simply trying to grow the strongest weed. And that's the way it is for the week of March 30th, 2015. I'm Thom Hartmann on Science and Green News.